Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into a seriously provocative and honestly kind of mind-bending piece of source material. We're looking at a text penned by Su Feng back in April 2024, and wow, it presents a philosophical concept that's just wild. So let's jump right in and break down exactly what this author is proposing.
Okay, let's dive into this. The author kicks things off with a question that literally stops you in your tracks. Do you aspire to have 100 virtuous and charming wives or 100 noble and competent husbands, right? Like, out of the gate, we're hit with a concept that sounds absolutely outrageous. Theoretically, even the text admits, this seems completely impossible in any normal sense of human relationships. But here's the kicker. The author boldly argues that, in practice, this is 100% achievable. So of course, you're immediately wondering, how on earth are they justifying this?
Well, to wrap our heads around it, we got to look at this stark comparison the text lays out. The author draws a hard line between the wrong way and the right way. Listen, you absolutely cannot pull this off through power or wealth. The logic makes sense, right? Partners you might somehow get through money or influence, yeah, there is zero guarantee they're actually going to be virtuous or competent. So instead, this philosophy demands a massive pivot to a strictly spiritual solution. The right way, what the author calls the golden key to this whole thing, is rooted in what's termed the path to heaven.
So what is this path exactly? That brings us to Section 1, Cultivating a Soul Garden.
We're going to take a deep dive into the specific, really rigorous conditions the author sets up here. Because remember, this isn't about physical acquisition. It's entirely about internal transformation. The text gives us 3 very strict spiritual prerequisites. Step 1, maintain a beautiful soul garden. Step 2, practice total selflessness. And Step 3, live openly and honestly. Now, these aren't just, casual suggestions for being a nice person. According to the source material, these are absolute sequential requirements. You can't just skip one and expect the whole thing to work. Let's unpack what the author actually means by each of these, starting with the first one.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the author uses this incredibly vivid agricultural metaphor for our inner lives. The source material basically pits weeds against flowers. In your own personal soul garden, the author says you have to completely rip out the weeds. And by weeds, they mean toxic traits, stuff like jealousy, constant complaining, greed, resentment. In their place, you've got to actively plant and cultivate flowers. These are your positive life-affirming traits. Think gratitude, diligence, sincerity, romance, even humor. It's essentially a massive internal landscaping project, and it requires constant daily upkeep.
Okay, so once that internal garden is blooming, the text moves us to Step 2, radical selflessness. The author literally demands that you must possess nothing and be entirely willing to sacrifice yourself for the benefit of everyone else. The core assertion here is actually pretty fascinating. It's the idea that your life's efforts should never, ever be for yourself. Instead, your personal value only goes up by serving more people. It is a complete 180 from self-centered living. It basically demands that your primary function in life is to elevate those around you.
And then we hit the third step. And honestly, this is probably the most extreme mandate of the whole bunch. The text says, expose all aspects of yourself to the sunlight, even your psychological activities. The author is calling for absolute transparency here. We are talking zero concealment from the public. You have to be willing to broadcast even your deepest, most private thoughts and psychological processes to the world without a single second thought. It's a state of total, raw vulnerability. You're leaving absolutely no dark, hidden corners in your mind.
Now, if you can somehow pull off those 3 monumental tasks, the author makes a massively bold promise. The text essentially gives a 100% guarantee that fulfilling these steps won't just get you a measly 100 virtuous wives or competent husbands. It scales exponentially. We're talking 1,000, 10,000, or even 1,000,000. But wait, when you start throwing around a number like 1,000,000, what's the text's way of winking at the reader? It signals that something much deeper and definitely not literal is going on with this philosophy.
Which brings us to a really profound shift in the text, perfectly captured by this question from the author. When you reach this level, what depth, breadth, and height will your perspective and state of mind reach? Are you already living in heaven? This is exactly where the true meaning of the source material snaps right into focus. These staggering numbers, 1,000,000 spouses? It's a metaphor. The text isn't actually talking about physical polygamy at all. It's beautifully describing this vast, boundless, totally heavenly state of mind where your capacity to connect with, love, and appreciate humanity is just absolutely unlimited.
But of course, there is a massive catch to achieving and holding on to this boundless state. Let's get into Section 2, the law of non-possession.
This introduces the ultimate plot twist of the source material. It's the absolute foundational rule that holds this entire philosophical structure together. So the crucial point is summarized perfectly in these 3 simple words from the text: have, not possess.
This is the central paradox of the whole shebang. The author draws a hard, undeniable line between the concept of connection and the concept of ownership. See, you can have a deep, spiritual, genuinely heavenly connection with thousands of people. But the absolute second you try to turn that connection into a possession, the entire foundation crumbles. In fact, the author issues a really severe warning about desiring to possess. If you start treating people as your private property, or if you try to restrict their absolute freedom in any way, the consequence is immediate. You instantly drop from 1 million connections down to absolute zero. The text paints a pretty vivid picture, stating that instead of living in heaven, you will wander on the edge of hell life after life. It's a really powerful, poetic way of saying that trying to claim ownership over another human's freedom destroys the entire spiritual endeavor.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought to chew on. The text wraps up by asking, are you on the right path where this is effortless, or the wrong path where it is just a dream? The author's arguing that if you're on the right spiritual path, the path of a beautiful soul garden, total selflessness, and granting true freedom, achieving this massive web of connection isn't even hard. Actually, it's just the natural state of things. But if you're trapped in that mindset of ownership and control, it's always going to be an impossible dream. It's a brilliant philosophical challenge that really asks us to evaluate our own day-to-day approaches to love, to attachment, and what it truly means to let people be completely free. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the Explainer. Keep nurturing that soul garden, and I'll catch you next time.